This is OwlUp, where learning happens in minutes, not hours. For a deeper journey, explore all our courses at owlup.co. Now, let's dive in. Welcome back to the Dopamine Reset. We're diving into Chapter 3 today, and let's be honest, this one's about the not-so-fun part of the journey. We're talking about what happens when you actually start pulling back from all those dopamine hits. And spoiler alert, your brain might throw a bit of a tantrum. Let's get into it. You quit the app, the cigarette, or the late-night snacks, and instead of feeling proud, you feel worse. Less joy, more irritation, zero motivation. Here's the twist. That awful dip isn't failure. It's your brain quietly rebooting its reward system. That reboot doesn't happen politely in the background. It shows up as the withdrawal phase. Your energy tanks, hobbies feel flat, small annoyances feel huge, and your own brain starts whispering, "See, you were better off before." This is the stretch where most people assume they're broken, weak, or just not ready. In reality, you're in a predictable, time-limited lane of the process. Different habits have different withdrawal signatures. Quitting nicotine might hit you with sharp, 3-minute waves of craving. Cutting ultra-processed snacks can make normal food taste bland for a while. Social media breaks often trigger a weird mix of FOMO and emptiness, like walking into a party after everyone's already left. This phase is uncomfortable, but it's also measurable, manageable, and trainable if you know what's coming. Some people hit this phase like a wall. Others slide into it so gradually they only notice in hindsight. One person might feel mostly foggy and tired, another wired and on edge, a third strangely flat, like they're moving through a movie shot in grayscale. Underneath those differences, the same theme shows up. Your old easy button is gone, and everything else suddenly costs more effort. Even simple wins, replying to a message, going for a walk, starting a task, can feel like lifting weights you didn't train for yet. That's not a character flaw, it's a signal. Your settings are shifting, and friction is data. When people describe this stretch, they usually reach for dramatic language. My motivation vanished. Nothing feels worth doing. I feel like a worse version of myself. That intensity isn't random. You've removed a fast, reliable dopamine hit, and your brain is temporarily underpowered for wanting, enjoying, and initiating. So it does something very predictable. It tries to drive you back to the old source. It does that in 3 main ways. First, it amplifies discomfort. You're more sensitive to boredom, minor stress, social awkwardness. Situations you used to tolerate feel strangely abrasive. This is your brain marking everything with a subtle, "fix this now" tag, and it still remembers the quickest fix. Second, it downplays alternatives. Reading, walking, cooking, talking to a friend all feel meh. This isn't proof those things are worthless, it's a temporary distortion in your internal rating system. If your usual soundtrack was blasting, normal volume songs will sound dull at first. Third, it deploys stories. Not just, "I want it," but, "This is pointless. I'm not productive without it. Other people can do this. I can't." Those narratives often arrive a few minutes after a trigger, a stressful email, a lonely evening, a tedious task. The craving isn't only in the body, it's also in the explanation your mind offers for why going back, just once, is reasonable. Here's the key. All 3, amplified discomfort, muted pleasure, and persuasive stories, tend to move in waves. They spike, crest, and fall. Nicotine research shows craving episodes are brief. The same wave pattern shows up across many dopamine-heavy habits. You're not signing up for 24/7 misery. You're learning to surf a series of short, noisy intervals. What actually changes the game is treating those intervals as training reps. Every time you ride out a wave without hitting the old button, your brain gets fresh data. We can survive this. We can do something else instead. Over days and weeks, that evidence starts to rewrite what feels automatic. The goal isn't to feel heroic, it's to repeat small, boring wins until not doing it is less effort than giving in. Think of this stretch less like white-knuckling it and more like rehab for your wanting system. For example, Someone who used to scroll every night might start with a tiny swap. Keep the phone in another room for just the first 15 minutes before bed and replace it with a low-effort task, stretching, a short podcast, or laying out tomorrow's clothes. They're not fixing their whole evening. They're collecting one data point that the wave passes. A coder who relied on energy drinks could experiment with a different response to the 3 p.m. crash. 5 minutes of brisk walking, a glass of water, and one clearly defined microtask, like writing a single test. It still feels flat at first, but they're proving to their brain that progress is possible without the old boost. In music production, turning down a track that's been too loud makes the whole mix sound dull. For a while. Producers don't immediately crank it back up. They give their ears time to recalibrate. You're doing the same thing with your habits. Early adopters are already turning this messy stretch into a kind of training ground. Instead of just toughing it out, they're asking, what if this low motivation window is when I quietly upgrade my defaults, bedtime, movement, how I respond to stress? Like a traveler stuck in a layover who learns the airport by heart, people start mapping triggers, energy dips, and micro-wins. That self-knowledge becomes a compass they can reuse whenever life forces an unplanned reset. Instead of grading yourself on how you feel, start noticing how you respond. A rough morning where you still show up to work, answer one hard message, or cook instead of order in is like adding a brick to a path you'll walk for years. Over time, those tiny, boring choices become your new autopilot, even when motivation is nowhere to be found. Before next week, ask yourself, 1. In what specific situations do I feel myself slipping into withdrawal? For example, not replying to messages, canceling plans, or going silent in conflicts. And what exactly is happening right before that moment? 2. If I didn't withdraw next time, what is one honest sentence I could say instead? Something like, I'm overwhelmed right now and need 20 minutes alone, but I'm not leaving the conversation. 3. Who is one safe person I can tell about my withdrawal pattern this week, and what do I want them to know about how to support me when I start pulling away? This was OwlUp, your daily step forward. This series continues with more chapters on OwlUp.co. Visit OwlUp.co to access the complete course and continue your learning journey. See you there!